welcome to South Suburban Missionary Baptist Church, our midweek moment. Many of you know me, but I am Reverend Melanie C. Jones, and I serve here at South Suburban Missionary Baptist Church. We're located at 15201 South Lexington Avenue in Harvey, Illinois, and our pastor is none other than the Reverend Dr. Annette Jones. As you know, August is an exciting month. It is the eighth month of the new year or of the year, and its meaning is new beginnings. We often celebrate August because it is also the month where students everywhere began to return back to school. This month's midweek moment is entitled Back to School Midweek Moment, the Graduate and Professional Schools Edition. As many of you know, in today's career climate, you often need more than one degree in order to advance and climb the professional and social ladder. Our interest at South Suburban is to educate and to inspire not only our members, but the world. And in this way, education is, as Bell Hooks says, the practice towards freedom. It is the practice or the disciplines by which we can empower ourselves, free ourselves, and move ourselves to the next place of our own destiny. This week, I'm excited to invite to our platform my good Howard bestie, none other than Gerald A. Ashby Jr., who will talk to us about what it means to prepare to go back to school or to think about approaching law school as a journey or a professional career. Welcome, Gerald. Good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, we are so excited to have you. I am happy to have you, not only because I know about the awesome work that you've been doing since you left college, obviously, because we were friends all at college. We went to Howard University, HU, and we're so proud of just the experience that you have as in college and the way of getting to know people that ultimately become your life friends. But on today, we want to talk about your journey after college, which included going to law school. So, my first question for you, Gerald, is why go to law school?
That's a great question. I think the top reason that anyone should go to law school is because they love the law, that they are really excited about the legal system, the justice system, how laws work, and that excites them. For me, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. In undergrad, I was really distracted and uncertain about which path to follow. And I think that most kids are only exposed to a certain number of career paths. As a kid for you, I'm sure you thought, going into ministry is a career path. I never thought of that because I didn't see it necessarily as an example, but you see actors on TV or athletes playing sports. You go to the doctor's office and see your doctor. And so I thought, hey, I'll be a pediatrician. And once I got to undergrad and got to see all the different degree programs and all the different schools and colleges, I was overwhelmed. And so I changed my major 5 times and finally landed on political science pre-law path to pursue a career in the legal field, knowing that it was really a dream deferred for both of my parents. My mother and father both aspired to be lawyers when they were kids and never got to accomplish that. And so I thought, let me take on their dream and complete it because I wasn't drawn in any one particular way. And I think my experience working with an alternative spring break program also really exposed me to the power that the legal career had and the law students that got to go with us got to do some really dynamic work in helping people get insurance payments out for their homes that were destroyed at Hurricane Katrina. Working on legislation to really change how laws impacted the residents of New Orleans and things of that nature. And so I thought, wow, I would love to be able to wield that kind of power to help people and change their lives for the better.
First thing, I did not know that you had 5 majors, and I went to college with you. So that was a shock. Look how much you learn from people. Um, but the second thing was, I think you're absolutely right. What you already share is that sometimes going to college, you have no idea, or you have an idea of what you're interested in pursuing professionally, and you realize along the journey that there are a host of other opportunities or way of thinking about how you might live out your career goals that might be different than what you intended. So the
Yeah.
first part of that is be open to the process of change. But
Hmm.
also, the second part of that is when you identify something or you see something that's interesting in the work that other people do, uh, it's okay to pursue it. It's okay to follow it. It's okay to, go after it as well.
Yeah, I would say, especially for parents listening, try to expose your kids to more. I think the world is smaller than it's ever been, especially when we were kids and still in the infancy of the internet. But now, you can be exposed to so many different career options, and the younger generations are producing brand new careers where being an internet influencer is truly a lucrative career path. But I think more than anything, exposure is key. And so if you can seek to expose your kid to things in the arts, things in the social sciences, things in communications and the journalism world, just let them see a little bit of everything, or at least illuminate for them that, hey, you saw that person doing that thing. That's a potential career for you. Does that interest you? Because I think my blinders were so tight that I really only thought, of those few career paths: lawyers, doctors, things like that. And um, you don't want your first opportunity to know about all these different options once you get to the place where you're spending money to be there. Because that's how people end up in undergrad for 5+ years. And thank God that I didn't, because yeah, I changed my major so often. And yeah, very grateful that I made it out in the four.
So going to law school requires preparation. And
Hmm.
often that starts way before the moment you wake up, like the year that you want to go to law school. You have to be doing some things in preparation.
Right.
What are the prerequisites for consideration, or what are the ways that folks can prepare to go to law school?
Yeah, so the degree that you achieve in law school is called the Juris Doctorate or Juris Doctor degree, and it's a postgraduate degree. So for most law schools in general, it requires that you have a bachelor's degree, but there's no specific prerequisite courses that you have to take to be eligible to go to law school. Like there doesn't have to be a certain kind of class on your transcript for you to have done that, but obtaining a college degree from an accredited university or college is definitely a baseline prerequisite for most legal institutions. But I would recommend that if you are considering it and you're currently in school, take some additional math and English courses. Ultimately, I found that individuals that were most successful in law school and more successful in the legal field more broadly majored in math and English. And that's because the study of law and the practice of law requires that you problem solve, that you have really excellent reasoning skills, that you have advanced reading and comprehension skills, and you're a really strong persuasive writer. Because essentially what you're doing in the legal field is writing and reading the most. And there's not a whole lot of, going to court and arguing, which I think starts to become a misconception about the practice. And the other piece I would say is your GPA and LSAT score. So, your grade point average in undergrad is really important. And your LSAT scores are key indicators because law schools are prestigious institutions, and so they want their students to reflect kind of their broader mission and vision. And they want you to align with a certain level of excellence to go to that school. And so they're looking and evaluating you, especially because it's going to impact their ratings on the US News and World Report rankings to say, is this a tier one school or a tier two school or tier three school? I know I mentioned LSAT. The LSAT is law school admissions test. And most law schools require that you take that test and score, um, you know, pretty high to even be considered. But actually, in the last few years, Mel, what we've seen is a lot of law schools have started to accept GRE
Mhm.
versus LSAT,
Yeah.
which is a major game changer. But again, based on what I explained, like because it doesn't really matter what discipline you came from, you may be a lot more successful in an exam like the GRE, which is a more generalized graduate school examination. And so I would say that those are really the foundational things that you should consider thinking more about math and English in your studies and really focusing on having a good GPA and a strong LSAT score.
Yeah, I like that. I hear preparation is thinking about in your undergrad courses how you can take more math and English. I
Mhm,
hear keeping a good GPA, and that's a B plus average or above. So this is above a 3.0.
mhm.
And also thinking about preparations in terms of LSAT prep and even now possibility for even GRE prep being used as possibilities for consideration. This is awesome. I wonder, just as there are tiers in terms of colleges, when folks are picking colleges at the undergraduate level, whether it's HBCUs like we attended, or state schools, or Ivy League schools, which are your top tier um, academic schools. How do folks choose a good law school? What are the paths to choosing a good law school?
Yeah, great question. I think to your point, there are definitely different tiers. Tiers generally are mostly impacted by the GPA of law students and pass rate from bar examinations. So they're monitoring, how many people that graduated from this institution have passed the state bar exam to become a licensed attorney. But I think beyond that, in choosing a good quote unquote law school, you have to consider a number of factors. I think location is a really important factor to consider. It really dictates your internships and externship opportunities, any experiential learning, the alumni population that you'll have access to, professional networks, and postgraduate job prospects. Like, where are you going to work? Because if you choose a location that's really saturated with lawyers, like, New York and California, even Michigan, where I live, there are 5 law schools. So you can imagine they're pushing out hundreds of or thousands of attorneys year over year, that may make it harder to find a career in law. And so consider your location because it's likely that you'll, even if you're relocating to go to law school, it's likely that you'll stay there. I originally from California, went to undergrad in DC, but it made my home in Michigan because, again, I spent so much of my early adult life in Michigan, and it's become my second home. And so, location is definitely key. I would say another really great resource to look at is admitted student profiles. So basically, every law school is required to post data on their students. And so you can get a really good insight on what was the average LSAT score for a student in this, graduating class or first year class. What were their GPAs? Thinking about things like other average kind of metrics to see how you stack up against those individuals. Another really great thing to consider is cost and financial aid. Are you going to go to a private law school versus a public law school? Because the cost will be significantly different. And consider the return on your investment because you may be paying out of pocket for that. are you going to be able to yield a career that will help pay any debt that you accrue? And the other return on investment things could really be around the same factors I said around location. Like, do you really like this city? Would you see yourself working here? Um, what kind of alum are in their network? Do they have a bunch of personal injury attorneys coming out of their school versus judges and other kind of superior legal careers? So I think that the cost benefit analysis is really important for people to do, and the list kind of goes on from there. I mean, you could be thinking about faculty, the academic programs, what kind of opportunities do they offer? When I was in law school, I participated in two externship programs, which essentially I got to practice law while I was in law school, which is a really unique experience, and got to work with the state appellate defense office. So I handled a case for an actual human being who was in prison to help reduce his sentence based on errors in his case. And so that's a great reason to choose my law school, because they had that partnership with the state. But every school is not going to have that. Thinking about the size of the school, do you want to be at a small place or a really large institution? Student culture, do they have programs that for affinity groups where you'll feel like you're more part of a community? As Mel said, we went to Howard. It's a historically Black institution, and I left that and went to a predominantly white institution. And it was jarring culturally because I had been in a place where I didn't have to identify as being Black anymore. And then got pulled back into reality where the first thing people see is, hey, you're Black, and experienced uh, a lot of challenges socially, thinking about even simple little incidents and butting heads with people just because of microaggressions that they were expressing. And so consider that. Is it a culture that you want to be a part of? The career services, the alumni, the reputation of the institution. Are you, buying a Payless or are you buying a Nike? And that's something to consider. I think the blessing that we have is that we went to Howard. And so that's something that we'll always lead with in conversation around careers. And I can't say specifically about my law school, whether or not it's something I generally take pride in because it's not a high ranking institution. But I think I also could balance that with knowing that I went to Howard. If I hadn't gone to Howard, I probably would have been a lot more pressed to go to a better or more well-known institution from my law school education.
Yeah, I think so much of that is so rich. Just like, we talk and we talked on this platform before about all the processes by which we think about undergraduate institutions, location, the kind of admitted students that they've had, or even their alumni that have come from the institution, to, class size, to tuition costs, and so forth. All of those go into thinking about law school as
Mhm.
well. And even for graduate and professional schools, I think it's so important to think there are numerous of options. So you don't just have to think about the first law school that you get into or the first law school that you see that is close to where you live, but there are options all around. And so having a sense of there are a multitude of options prior to even applying, can I narrow this down to think of some that I think that would be a really great fit for me, and then starting the process from there sounds like a great way of thinking of how to approach it.
Yeah, for sure.
For folks who are watching, I think we talked about this somewhat in terms of folks who are in college right now and might be thinking of law school. But as a person who teaches at an institution that trains folks in graduates for graduate degrees, majority of my students are not students who have just come out of college. In fact, they are second career students who have had perhaps some collegiate training either earlier on in their life and then decided to go back for another degree, or folks who started their collegiate training very late in life
Mm.
and are continuing to move forward in the process. In terms of law school, is law school an option for second career?
Yeah, of course. I think second career attorneys are highly sought after because when you think about it, they're already set up for success to work. That they have basic skills that an employer is going to find really attractive because you won't have to spend so much time ramping them up like you would teaching a kind of fresh out of school attorney about just how business works or how companies work. And so if you're coming from any other career path, you have transferable skills on just how to approach being at work, which is something that can't really be taught. You have to gain through experience. So coming fresh out of law school, I was at a disservice because I didn't have a lot of work history outside of, the retail industry. And so it definitely is more challenging as a fresh grad. So I would say it's ideal for approaching as a second career. I know a lot of people I went to school with. I took a number of evening classes, and those were part-time law students who were on a 5-year track versus the kind of customary 3-year track. And they also benefited because they weren't inundated with as much work. And if I could do it all over again, I would definitely think about doing it part time over a 5-year time span because I could dedicate more of my time and energy to less topics and would have become even more successful because I think I would have been able to digest it in a better pace. But yeah, I definitely encourage folks to consider this as a second career path if they're really excited about the idea of going to law school because your strength, your maturity, having that solid foundation is going to be highly attractive for an employer.
Yeah. I watch, and even, just second career students having just greater discipline
Mhm.
in terms of their approach, right? Because they've been in the workforce for some time and they are coming back to this now very intentional about what it is they want to study and very clear about their goals.
Mhm.
While folks who are still, going through straight through are still kind of working through, where do I want to land? How do I want to do this? And so, interested in taking in all the information, but perhaps not as very definitive on where they want to end up or what this, might help them to accomplish or achieve.
Yeah, there's definitely a different level of seriousness
Hmm.
once you've been out in the real world and you've experienced adulthood and now deciding to go back to school. I think you approach it so much differently.
Yeah, yeah. So I imagine one of the biggest barriers for folks when they talk about law school is cost. Like, um, if you come out of undergrad, you already have perhaps some price tags. If scholarships were helpful, or maybe grants were helpful, or maybe you had to get some loans. But now, when we talk about advanced degrees, that's a different tier in terms of costs.
Yeah.
Um, what are the typical costs associated with law school?
Yeah, this is definitely a question I had to spend some time thinking about, even the cost that I incurred, but doing some more research. It looks like um, in 2019, the average cost of tuition, and that's not including your cost of living expenses at a private law school, was around 49,000 per year. And for out of state students at public law schools, tuition and fees, again, not including your cost of living expenses, averaged around $41,000. So you're considering between $40 and $50,000 per year. And then on top of that, you have to consider your living expenses. So if you're relocating, all the costs associated with that. And based on my recollection, that cost also doesn't include textbooks, which, just like an undergrad, are very expensive. And generally, your law professor has published the text. And so there's not a lot of wiggle room around, finding, this book in the library or copying pages from someone because these textbooks are very large. And so you undoubtedly will have to spend thousands of dollars in textbooks every year as well. Um, I think, you want to consider what's your life cost right now? What's your budget look like today? and add 50,000, and I would probably even say now we're in 2022, you could be looking between 50 and $60,000 in costs per year. And that's baseline. That's for probably a middle of the road law school. I
Mhm.
went to a private law school. By the time I got out of law school and I took out loans for every year because I didn't do my research, I didn't prep well enough to try to seek out scholarships um, or fellowships or something that would have helped take on some of that cost. And so I left law school with nearly $200,000 in debt. And based on, years of small incremental payments, the interest rate on those loans has grown so exponentially that today I owe probably closer to $300,000. And so thinking, my house is half of that cost, and I get to live here for as long as I want to. So consider that you're making a house worth decision, a life decision, and it's a very, very large financial commitment. Um, and there's not a guarantee that it will yield an income that will suffice the cost or even set you up for success to pay that cost off in any reasonable amount of time. And I know we'll talk more about kind of misconceptions, but definitely don't come into this field thinking I'm going to spend or be in debt for $200,000 or $300,000, but I'm going to get a job that's going to cost me or that's going to pay me $500,000 so I can just pay it off. That's not the case. And so be mindful that it's a lot of debt and it's going to take a long time to pay it off.
Yeah, it makes me think. So we talked about cost benefit analysis, right? So there are costs associated and then there are benefits associated. But it also makes me think of even when President Barack and Michelle, like even into President Barack's presidency, they were just beginning to pay off their law school debts.
Mm,
So in many ways, I mean, they had been 20 plus years into their career, high achieving lawyers, and
mhm.
obviously working at high achieving firms. This can tell you the time span that it takes to not only pay off that debt, but ultimately to see the return on the investment
Yeah.
that you made. And this is why making the decision to go to law school is something that you have to be sure that it's something that you want to do, because these are costly decisions that yield very, beneficial results. Like I'm sure it feels great to be a lawyer, or it feels great to, participate in the legal practice in whatever ways that a person goes in terms of their professional career. But that also has a hefty price tag. So being considerate of what it will take to get there is
Mhm.
also something very, very important. Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
So moving forward, we're already there. Like, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about law school?
Yeah, I think we touched on some of them already. The fact that you're going to increase your earning potential, I think is a misconception. I actually got that lesson in undergrad. I had the privilege of having a pre law professor at Howard that taught in the Socratic method, which is the practice that law schools put into place. So when you're in class, effectively, you need to be prepared well enough to teach that class. That everyone is expected to know the content so well that you can participate actively, and you're going to be called on to answer, and not answering or performing is grounds to be asked to leave that class. And so he was an amazing professor. But one of the days we were in class, he talked to us about earning potential and showed us his path from the debt that he incurred in law school and his first paying job. And effectively, most people are coming out of law school making above $50,000. but it's not significantly above because most attorneys are going to go into government in some form or fashion, being prosecutors or defense attorneys for the state, for the city. And so when you consider that you're a government employee, there are benefits to that for longevity, but your earning potential is capped pretty significantly. And so you're not going to come out of law school making $100,000. That's a very small minority of students who will be picked up by firms. And you also have to consider how many people are graduating with you. And so, and where you fall in your class rankings, and also the fact that people aren't retiring as young as they used to, especially people in these professional careers, lawyers and doctors, um, professors. They're staying in their roles into their 70s and 80s. And so there's not room for you to go to a firm and think you're going to be on the partner track, because the partners are all holding on and will, for lack of a better phrase, and excuse my grim phrasing, but they will die at their desk.
Mm.
They will hold on to that career until the very bitter end. And so I think a major misconception is I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to make a ton of money. I can say transparently, I have had a lucrative career, but I have taken an alternative legal career path because I'm not working or practicing as an attorney today. I work in the HR field and in people operations role, which, funny enough, I found that in most organizations, their head folks in the people organization are lawyers. And they found a home in this space because so much of what I do is reading the law and dictating contracts and finding compliance issues that are tied to employment laws. And so it's a really strong career path. And there are a number of alternative legal careers that I think boast higher earnings because we are sought after in places where there's not a bunch of us going. And so I think that that's something to consider if you definitely want to see yourself, standing in a court and arguing a case. There's not a lot of earning potential in that space. A lot of attorneys have to have an entrepreneurial mindset. And so if you're thinking you're going to get picked up by a firm and you're going to be an employee, it's also a misconception. Most employers are entrepreneurs and they're in business for themselves, fighting for clients, but then fighting their clients to even get payment. Because as a sole proprietor, you're billing someone, there's no legal relationship that indebts them to you. You'd have to sue them for that money. And in some cases, a lot of my friends who are practicing attorneys and out on their own literally have to hassle people to even pay those debts. That's how they earn their living. I think another misconception is that law school is for people that like to argue. And I'm sure you heard it as a kid when you like to go back and forth with people, and that, hey, you should be a lawyer because you love to argue. Like I said at the beginning of this conversation, the legal career is about reading and writing. So if you don't like to read and you don't like to write, do not
Here,
approach this
here.
career. No, I'll tell you, it's not you. There's very few people getting to do the theatrics of the legal field, and it's fun. I trust me. I've been on court. I've been in court. I've been on the record. I have fought for clients. I did divorce and child custody for a little bit, and it's exciting. But very few people do it, and it's not very lucrative. And so if that's what you're thinking, like, hey, I want to argue and I can win an argument, law school is not for you. You might want to go into journalism. You might want to go into a number of other career paths, but that's not what this career is about. It's about reading and writing. That's it.
This is so timely, Jared, because, and I can call Jared because that's my friend, but it's so timely because I think these misconceptions are, if I get a degree in this, then I need to work in this professional role. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, no, these degrees give you skills.
Mm-hmm.
that should be able to help you transgress a multiplicity of disciplines or even careers, because now you possess new skills that these degrees offer, rather than suggesting just because you go to law school mean you're going to be this lawyer, or you're going to be a practicing attorney, or you're going to be doing these kinds of things,
Yeah.
and having a very kind of linear way of thinking of this. No, just like with undergrad degrees, folks who are chemistry majors are now heads of, all of these kinds of things that had nothing to do with their chemistry degree, or have nothing to do with their biology degree, or have nothing to do health and medicine at all. And they've been in business or other aspects of their professional career. Degrees or education, particularly at the undergraduate and at the graduate level, are about giving you various skills that can help you to ultimately pursue a multiplicity of career paths.
Yeah.
Mhm. So, to that point, then, what are the benefits of a law degree? You already kind of spoke to this in some form, but why would people go to law school, I guess, is the question. If the law degree is an option, what are the benefits can they see, hopefully gaining from this degree?
Yeah, you started to touch on it a minute ago. I think we've created in our society an expectation that people go to college, because it's a barrier to entry into the working world. That unfortunately, you and I both know people that even got undergraduate degrees and end up working at Starbucks, and that's not a diss at working in food services or in that career path. But so more often than not, most people have a degree, and it's because we've ingrained it in culture to go and achieve that high school is not the end. Now obtaining a bachelor's degree is that new entry point, but it gives you those transferable skills that you need to go into certain doors, and that one degree that you get in undergrad could unlock so much opportunity in so many different places because of the transferable skills that you have attained.
Yeah.
To that point, the Juris Doctor degree, I believe, is the skeleton key to the entire professional world.
Wow.
Because
Wow.
if you think about it, every single person, place, or thing needs a lawyer.
Hmm.
It requires a certain kind of mindset and understanding. And there's so many transferable skills that benefit you. Even for me, not practicing law, there are things that I know how to do because I obtained a legal education, that my mind processes challenges differently.
Absolutely.
For example, and this is this is not a good way to leverage it. So I'm not celebrating this necessarily, but I got pulled over for texting and driving, which is a big no-no. Do not do that. And I read the law, and I found in the law that you can touch your phone and not break the texting and driving law. You can't have more than two fingers on your phone. And so when I went to court, I argued that I had touched my phone with one finger and it illuminated my car because it was dark outside. And the officer assumed that I was texting and driving because he saw my car light up. And I won that argument. But that's because my mind took me to, let me find how my issue can be driven through the law, and on the other side there's a solution, because that's how I was taught. And
Mhm.
so that's a skill that I can always draw back to that legal experience. um, I'm always a competitive applicant. When people see that I have a law degree, it's intimidating. When you have a PhD, when you have an MD, when you have a JD, people are undoubtedly, even if they obtain a similar degree, are going to have a different level of respect for you because they know the time and energy, or they assume the time and energy it took for you to get that degree, and the level of knowledge or intelligence that it would require for you to successfully accomplish that task. And so I'm always a competitive applicant. I know how to review contracts. So when I'm faced with buying a house or purchasing a car, signing anything, I know how to read and digest a contract and be able to change or negotiate that contract because of the skill set that I have. It is invaluable because you can imagine how much you pay for even transactional relationships with lawyers to be able to read something for you and
Right.
then you sign based on what they tell you it says. I don't have to do that. I can do that myself. I have increased communication skills. I can read and understand the law like I spoke to. And the way I write has even changed because of that legal education. And so I can be a lot more effective in the words that I use and how I produce anything that I'm writing because I'm a lot more effective at communicating in that format. And so those are a few of kind of the top skills I would say that I gained in that process. But again, to go back, I have to think about the return on the investment. Is it worth all of the debt that I've incurred? Is it worth um, the income that I've earned? Is it worth all of those things? For me, I can say yes. I'm proud of the path that I took. If I could do it over again, like I said, I probably would have spread it out a little bit longer. I would have been more judicious about which law school I chose and spent more time in the application process and not made a decision with so much desperation because I really didn't want to graduate from undergrad and move back home and find myself, working in retail and just not knowing what to do next. It really set me up for success to start my career. And so, yeah, I think there are numerous benefits, but definitely not a decision to make lightly.
Yeah, this has been so amazing. The wealth of knowledge that you shared with us, the amount of precision that you've had for each of the questions is absolutely phenomenal. And one of the things, folks are like, why are we talking about graduate and professional schools? I'm like, because number one, as we move into advanced degrees, it becomes insider knowledge that if we're very honest about, Black folk don't always have that insider knowledge. And so we don't know what
Yeah.
it takes to get to law school. We have very far reaching dreams about law, medicine, PhDs, all these things. But we just don't know the pathway. And so we're stuck following and looking to friends or folks who will bring us along and sometimes trying to acquire mentors that all of us just don't have. So these kind of spaces and forums that makes this conversation publicly accessible, available for anybody to have access to and to come back to rewind, to stop the video and to go back and to hear it all over again is absolutely exceptional and so necessary for our communities and for our growth and advancement. And the other thing, I mean, I am just invested in seeing us pursue those advanced degree tracks. I think it's so important that we see more of us at these tables. That it's not just only two or three people of color, that we continue to invite more people into the boardroom, and that's by sharing and exchanging our knowledge. So Gerald, thank you so much for joining us today. um, your knowledge is incomparable. We're so grateful for the gift of your time, for your witness. And I know you're doing extraordinary things in your career. And I'm so looking forward to that because I know the best is really yet to come for you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank y'all for those. We are just getting started on our back to school series, graduate and professional schools. We'll be talking to folks in medicine and in social work and in PhDs and even sometime in seminary. So come on back next week as we continue to move forward these conversations to learn about how do we prepare to go back to school for advanced degrees. Thank you again. Please follow South Suburban Missionary Baptist Church on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook, or even you can send a donation to us at PayPal SSNBC. and or sign up for our updates at southsuburbanmbchurch.org. Thank you so much. This is our back to school midweek moment signing off. See y'all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.